What is going on YouTube? We're Running on Sports back here with another video. Today is our preseason week 2 preview. Got a lot of preseason games to talk about, and I think that this week we'll probably see a little more of some of the starters play, and if they did play last week, they'll probably play a little bit longer. So that will be nice to see, make the game a little more interesting, and it'll be fun to watch. Favorite players. Last week we had some pretty good games go on, and so with that being said, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. Follow our social media pages at @rungun_sports on Instagram, at @rungunsports on TikTok, and follow and leave a like on this video. And so let's get right into it. With the very first game is the New England Patriots versus the Philadelphia Eagles. New England Patriots currently searching for their quarterback, and I think that right now Cam Newton is probably the starter, but Mac Jones played pretty well last week versus the Washington football team, and I thought that he was making reads very good. Cam Newton did not play as well, so I think that Mac Jones is closing in a lot quicker than he could be. He could be a starter by week 2, and that's very possible at this point. So and we'll see how that goes. The Eagles right now just trying to get Jalen Hurts just some playing time and get him used to it and play a full season last year, and so it'll be good to watch. This game, the New England Patriots, I think they have a whole lot more depth, so I think the Patriots are going to win this game, and the Eagles, might keep it close. Right now, New England's favored by 1.5 points, but I think that they're going to win it with their defense, and they got two very strong QBs, and I honestly think that they should give Mac Jones the start just to, give him the experience of starting a game in the NFL, because starting the game in the NFL versus coming in the second quarter is a lot different. So that is the only game that is on Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Friday, August 20th, there's two games on, both at 5 p.m. First game, probably the best game of this week, is the Chiefs versus the Arizona Cardinals. Both these teams won their game last week. The Chiefs won 19-16 versus the 49ers, and the Cardinals also won 19-16 versus the Dallas Cowboys. And this was both those games were close, especially the Cardinals game came down to game-winning field goal, and this is going to be a really good game. Really, both these teams have set who is going to be their preseason or their regular season starters and whatnot, and so it's just really, this is going to be a game for both these teams to establish some backup roles and see who can fill in if needed. And I think it'll be a pretty close competitive game, probably low scoring, but it's going to be a pretty good game at the end of the day, probably a defensive battle. And at the end of the day, I think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to come away with this one. I really like Colt McCoy and what he does for them, and I think that he's going to help them out a lot. Moving on to the Bengals versus the Washington football team. Joe Burrow versus Chase Young. The Bengals coming off a win last week versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions, 19-14. Washington football team lost to the New England Patriots 22-13, and the Washington football team clearly has a good defense, and I think that that's going to help them out in this game. But this preseason for them has got to be focused on trying to build some offensive players and some schemes for the regular season, because they struggle on the offensive side of the ball, but their defense is phenomenal. But if they can get some offense put together pretty well, then it's going to help them out a lot. And the defense is already very strong, and that will help them out a ton. And I think that the Washington football team will probably win this game just for the fact that their defense is very strong and the Bengals offense is not that good. But we'll see what happens. I do have the Washington football team winning that game. Moving on to Saturday's games. Most of the games will be played on Saturday. The Buffalo Bills versus the Chicago Bears. Both teams won their game last week, 16-15, game-winning field goal for the Buffalo Bills versus the Detroit Lions, and 20-13 win for the Chicago Bears. And I think that Justin Fields should get the start in this game. I don't think he probably will, but I think that he should, just for the experience of starting a game. And the Bills really don't have too strong a defense, so it wouldn't be too much of a task for him. And I'd like to see that him go against some first team reps, first team defenses, because he looked good last week and all, but at the same time he's going against third stringers, so it's really not that impressive to me. And the Bills, Mitch Trubisky in there, and I think if the Bills play like they did last week, where they had too many mental mistakes and they just kept it way too close versus a team that they should have easily beat, I think that the Bears could come away with this win. But I do think at the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills will end up winning this football game. Moving on to the Jets versus the Packers. Both the Jets won their game versus the New York Giants 12-7. The Packers lost to the Houston Texans 26-7. Now, if that was a regular season game, I think a lot of people would be freaking out. But the Texans, Davis Mills is a pretty solid quarterback, and I think he played pretty good for them, and so that helped them out a lot. And the Packers defense has been, kind of suspect at times, and that's just on the first string. We saw it in the NFC Championship last year, but I think that if they can figure it out, and obviously the depth is not there, but that's probably one of the main reasons they lost. But I think that is going to cause problems in these type of games, but in the season it's going to not help either, because the lack of depth, if someone is to go out, or just them being not a solid consistent defense, is going to hurt them in the regular season. For the Packers, the Jets, a lot of rookie quarterbacks this year, should give Zach Wilson a start. Like I said, with the Buffalo Bills, not the strongest defense, so it wouldn't be too much of a task for him to deal with. At the end of the day, though, I do think the Green Bay Packers are going to come away with this game. Hopefully Jordan Love is going to lead them to a decent amount of points on the offensive side of the ball. Moving on to the Falcons versus the Dolphins. Miami currently favored by 5 points in this game. Both these teams lost in their preseason games. Tennessee Titans beat the Falcons by 20 points, and the Miami Dolphins lost 20-13 to the Buffalo Bills. So both these teams coming off losses. Dolphins are going to give Tua probably some more playing time. He got more playing time than most stars in the NFL did, so I think that that's going to help them out a lot, and he'll probably end up winning this game for them. And the Falcons, A.J. McCarron, their quarterback, did not play very well at all, and that didn't help him in the long run, because he started for them. And I think that Felipe Franks should get some more playing time, because he didn't pass the ball well, but he ran the ball pretty well, which is really very odd, because it's not really what we're used to seeing Felipe Franks do at Arkansas and the University of Florida. So I thought that was very odd. But I do think Miami's going to win this game. Just the offense will be too much for the Falcons, and I'd like to see Jalen Waddle play a little more than he did. He didn't really get in that much. He returned a kick, and they didn't really try to get him the ball, which I thought was unfortunate, because he's exciting to watch. The Ravens versus the Panthers. The Ravens defeated the Saints last week 17-14, and the Panthers lost 21-18 versus the Colts on Sunday's game, and a game-winning field goal as well. And the Panthers right now, they're just an interesting team, because their defense is almost close to being a good defense, but it's not quite there. Their offense is a long way, so the Panthers are just a work in progress. I don't think Matt Rule has much time left in Charlotte, North Carolina with that team. The guy's too far of a way to go, and I just don't think that he can do it, unfortunately. But the Baltimore Ravens have to figure out who their number 2 quarterback is going to be, whether it's going to be Trace McSorley or Tyler Huntley or Brett Hundley, and so we'll see what happens. I think Trace McSorley is definitely more fit to be a second string quarterback than Tyler Huntley, just for the fact that he has a lot more experience. He played quite a bit last season, so I think that gives him more of the it gives him more experience, and in my opinion, makes him more qualified for it. But I think the Ravens will come away with the win in this game. The Panthers' defense and their offense under Will Greer was just not good at all, and they struggled big time. The Lions versus the Steelers. Steelers have won 2 preseason games. The only team to win 2 preseason games right now because of the Hall of Fame game that they played in. And the Lions last week coming off a tough loss that they honestly had a chance in, but it was just bad clock management at the end of the game gave the Bills too much time to go down and score, and they sure did. And I just thought that that was poor coaching by Matt Campbell and or Dan Campbell, and it affects you big time when you don't manage the clock well. And obviously, it's not that big of a. They don't look at it as that big of a deal just because it is a preseason game. But you got to practice that kind of stuff, and that's coaching 101 is clock management. And the Steelers, though, they have great depth at the quarterback position. Dwayne Haskins and Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph, all three of those guys are very good. So I think that they're definitely going to win this game. The Steelers have a legit shot to go undefeated in the preseason and go 4-0, the only team to have the opportunity to do that. Titans versus the Buccaneers, another interesting game. And the Titans coming off a win last week versus the Atlanta Falcons, 23-3. Huge performance by Logan Woodside pushed them to that win. And the Buccaneers coming off a small deficit loss, 19-14 versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And we're gonna get to see Kyle Trask. I think that's gonna be exciting to watch. And obviously Tom Brady's not gonna play in a preseason game. But I think if Logan Woodside can play as well as he did last week versus this Bucs defense that has a ton of depth, then they'll definitely have no problem winning this game. But the defense is going to be a challenge for the Titans, and these preseason games are really meant to test the Titans' depth at the defensive side of the ball. The Texans versus the Cowboys. The Cowboys are 0-2 in the preseason, only team to be 0-2 in preseason, and I think it comes down to the quarterback play. Cooper Rush and Garrett Gilbert and Ben DiNucci, none of those guys can be a second string quarterback in the NFL, and it affects them big time. They don't do much with any of those guys in, and so therefore I think that that's really the main reason that they're 0-2 right now. And because they have all the weapons in the world at receiver, even some of their third and fourth stringers, their deepest backup receivers, are honestly pretty good. And they just struggle for whatever reason, and I think it comes down to the quarterback. The defense is also kind of a problem, but the quarterback and the offense has to help them out. That doesn't help them at all. And the Texans 1-0 probably will win this game because of Davis Mills, and I think that he's going to have a big game versus this Dallas Cowboys defense that is very shaky. The Colts 1-0 versus the Vikings, who are 0-1 after being blown out 33-6 versus the Denver Broncos. And the Colts versus the Panthers game was just really a sloppy game altogether. No one really deserved to win this game, in my opinion. It was just a very sloppy game, preseason football. But I think the Vikings really struggled big time, and Jake Browning got the start because of Kellen Mond only having 3 days of practice. Whether they'll give Kellen Mond the start or not, I don't know, but Kellen Mond starting for them would probably win them this game if they do. So if they do start Kellen Mond, I think they'll win. If they don't, then I think they'll probably lose because Jake Browning is just not good enough to do anything versus any defense in the NFL. Raiders versus the Rams, a very interesting game. Marcus Mariota currently ruled questionable. Last week, the Raiders played the Seattle Seahawks and somehow managed to have Nathan Peterman play the entire game except for one snap, which was very odd. You never see that. And he played pretty well, I thought. Obviously led him to the win. But against this Rams defense that has a ton of depth, how well will he play? I don't know. And we'll see. The Seahawks do not have that good of a defense, especially compared to the Rams. So I think that that's going to be a bigger challenge for Nathan Peterman. But if Marcus Mariota's in there, it's going to help them. But I do think the Rams are going to come away with this win by their defense. Is going to pull through for them. Moving on to the last game of Sunday, the Seattle Seahawks versus the Denver Broncos. This game is going to probably be a tough game to watch for the Seahawks, for Seahawks fans like me, especially the way we played last week. Our quarterbacks are just not good at all. Geno Smith is questionable right now. He got the concussion, and Ryan McGoo, just not that good. And I think that Blake Bortles is out there on free agency right now, and I think that they honestly should consider giving him a look to become the second string quarterback, because if Russell Wilson is to go down, which is highly unlikely, then we're in big trouble and we're not going to do well at all. The Broncos are probably going to win this game. They got a lot of depth, and it's going to help them out versus our defense that is bad on the first string, let alone these third and fourth strings. The Giants versus the Browns. The Browns 1-0 after defeating the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Giants 12-7 after, 0-1 after losing to the Jets 12-7. And the Browns, they should be able to take care of business this game. The Giants are a team that aren't that good on their first string and have not that much depth anyways, so this should be an easy win for the Browns if they take care of business like they did last week, which was very impressive, I thought, just the way they handled the business and won the game. 49ers versus the Chargers. The 49ers are 0-1. Chargers are 1-0 after beating the Rams, and their defense played big. And I want to see Trey Lance get a good look against this defense who gave some problems to these Rams quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks. And I don't know if he'll get the start. I hope he does, but I kind of doubt it. They'll probably give Garoppolo a series or two. But Trey Lance played pretty well last week with an 80-yard touchdown, and I thought that was pretty impressive. But like I said, with Justin Fields, it's against not their top players, so there's kind of an asterisk beside it. But I want to see him go against this Chargers defense that is pretty deep on their depth chart, and I think that will be the telltale of the game. I think the Chargers will come away with this game. Actually, no, excuse me. I think that the 49ers are going to come away with this game. They've got two pretty good quarterbacks that can get it done, I think. But the Chargers defense can easily win them this football game. The last game of the week, Jaguars versus the Saints. The Saints looking for a QB, the successor of Drew Brees, whether it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. I think that the advantage has got to be to Jameis Winston. Taysom Hill, don't think could start 16 games, I guess, of the NFL season and be a very successful player. I just have a hard time seeing that happen. I like the role that they gave to him when Drew Brees was there, and I think that they should keep him in that role, in that position, and I think that will help the team's success. Jameis Winston, if he can get better, I think that he could help them out a lot, and they're not going to be as good as they were last year. Probably won't make the playoffs, but they're gonna have to. They're kind of in rebuild mode, and it's unfortunate to see. But the Jags like to see Trevor Lawrence go against this above average defense, not great defense, but the above average defense, and I'd like to see how he does against them. It'd be an interesting game. I do have the Saints winning this game. Just think that Jags don't have much depth anywhere on the field, but the Saints have decent depth at the quarterback position, and I think that both those guys can lead their teams to a win. So that is the final overview of this week's games. So we're just going to go through and tell you who we think is going to win each game. Patriots versus the Eagles. I think the Patriots will win that game. Cardinals versus Chiefs. I think the Cardinals are going to win this game. Bengals versus Washington football team. I think the Washington football team is going to win this game. Bills versus the Bears. I think the Bills are going to win this game. The Jets versus the Packers. I think that the Packers will win this game. Falcons versus the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins will win this game. Ravens versus Panthers. I think that the Baltimore Ravens will win this game. Steelers versus Lions. I have the Steelers. Titans versus the Buccaneers. I have the Titans winning that game. The Texans versus the Cowboys. I have the Texans winning that game. The Colts versus the Vikings. I have the Colts winning that game. And the Raiders versus the Rams. I have the Rams winning that game. The Broncos versus the Seahawks. I have the Broncos winning that game. The Giants versus the Browns. I have the Browns winning that game. 49ers versus the Chargers, I have the 49ers winning that game. And the Jaguars versus the Saints, I have the Saints winning that game. So that will wrap it up for today's video. If you guys have not already, please leave a like down below, subscribe, and share this with your friends. Thank you guys so much for watching.